So the Emperor Edition was released today, and that means Armenia, the new faction, is going to become available for all Rome 2 players. I think they're a kind of interesting faction. I'm a little sad because I feel like Creative Assembly could have taken more steps to introduce a bunch of new units to their roster. I realize it's a free LC, everybody's getting it, so they didn't maybe want to put as much effort as they possibly could into this because the patch is huge, and I get that. Patch 15 is absolutely massive. They had plenty of other things to focus on. I would have liked to have seen a couple more unique units, and I know that Armenia had its own culture and its own soldiers, so a little disappointed, but we're going to go over and do a faction overview for Armenia anyway, talk about what they could have done. I would have really liked to have seen an Armenian Cataphract variant. Instead, we're going to have the Royal Cataphracts, which, of course, they share with Parthia. A lot of their unit roster is very similar to Parthia, actually. Yeah, so they have the Royal Cataphracts. We all know how powerful they are. One of the best cav units, if not the best cav unit in the game. But some of the other cavalry variants that they introduced are interesting and kind of unique. Now, Persian Cavalry, I'm not really sure why Armenia gets them because it should be a mercenary unit. The Armenians were not Persian. Again, they had their own culture and soldiers, so this was an interesting choice, but I don't think any other faction in the game has them. A lot of the factions on the Arabian Peninsula that aren't actually in the game at the moment or playable have access to Persian Cavalry, but I think this might be the only faction that actually has them. So they're a shock cavalry unit, pretty cheap actually at only 760 talents. That's very cheap for a cavalry unit, and the reason they're so cheap is because they have really low armor. 40 armor, not going to be very survivable in melee, and again, they only have 15 melee defense, so what they do make up for that with is their huge charge bonus, 67, and of course they're going to have, actually no, I'm looking at their units looking at the unit right now, they don't actually have trample, which is interesting. They're a shock cav unit without trample. Okay, well, yeah, again, I haven't used this faction at all, so I'm learning things as I make this video, and they don't have trample, so I can see why they're cheap. 67 charge bonus is good, but really where shock cavalry is extremely effective is when you get that trample bonus, which is like 30 or 40 extra charge, and that's really where they start doing a lot of damage. So considering their low armor and how good archers are in this patch, maybe not a great unit. For campaign, I think that might be a good cavalry unit to round out some of your armies. But yeah, for multiplayer, I'm not sure. We'll have to see as this progresses. One unit that I think is really cool with Armenia now is the Kartli Axmen. They don't have fantastic stats. They're very similar to like a mid-tier sword unit. The difference is they have axes, and with this patch they actually introduced a bunch of new axe animations, which I haven't gotten a chance to see, but I might add that into the video, just show some of the new axe animations, if indeed they are there. I haven't seen any axe animations yet, so but that's what Creative Assembly said. So we'll look at that, but the cool thing about Axemen is that they have very high armor piercing. I believe for sword or axe units, they have the highest armor piercing in the game at 10. Now previously, a bunch of the sword units, the Roman sword units, had 8 or 10 armor piercing with the Gladius, but that was nerfed. I believe that a bunch of the Roman legionnaires only have 5 armor piercing now. So 10 armor piercing on an axe unit is very high with the 16 base damage. I mean, with the 26 weapon damage, the 16 base damage, yeah, they can pierce armor very effectively. Not going to be a great holding force. I would say that in campaign or multiplayer, you're not really going to want to bring a lot of infantry units with Armenia. What they really rely on is the Cataphracts and the Azat Knights. You guys know the Azat Knights, really good melee unit, melee cav unit, one of the best in the game. But yeah, I don't feel like you'll want to be bringing a lot of infantry units with them, just because you want to be able to afford the Royal Cataphracts, and of course, Eastern archers on this patch are very, very good. They have one more shot per minute than most of the other archers from Greece or Rome, and they have a lot of armor piercing, high missile damage, very good unit. So, and super cheap. At the moment, I think on this patch, archers are too cheap or too effective in killing things. I think they pierce armor too effectively, but that's a discussion for another time. They did actually add some new models to Armenia, and when we go to the battle screen or get into a battle, and I won't actually play the battle, but I'll show what some of these units look like. and they did add some unique unit models to them, so that makes me happy. But Noble Spearmen, very similar to a Hoplite unit, relatively cheap at 850 talents. They're very similar to the mercenary veteran Hoplites for Athens, maybe a little bit worse, but they're a good unit, very good holding force. And same with the Persian Hoplites. Again, these are very cheap, but Hoplites on this patch, or any spear unit with large shields and high armor, are going to be pretty effective at holding down a large group of sword units. So Persian Hoplites got a huge buff on this patch because, again, they last in combat for so long, and it allows your cavalry or the Royal Cataphracts or the Azat Knights to flank around and get some big hammer and anvils off. So I don't know. I feel like, again, there could have been more that CA did with this faction, but overall, they do have all the tools they need to be very effective. Royal Cataphracts, again, are a ridiculous unit, and that's really all you need. Eastern Archers and Cataphracts is a good combination. So one last unit that I want to talk about is the mercenary Cappadocian Cavalry. They're only capped at 2, so you can't make them your core or bring a bunch of these guys, but very similar to the Bactrian Noble Horse. And Bactrian Noble Horse, as some of you might know, are the most cost-effective melee cav unit in the game. Some people think they're overpowered. I would tend to say that they're maybe a little bit too good for their cost. I believe Bactrian Noble Horse are 880 talents. If you look at the stat difference between Bactrian Noble Horse and Cappadocian Cavalry, we have 42 for Bactrian Noble Horse. Every number that I say first will be Bactrian Noble Horse, and every number that I say second will be for the Cappadocians. So 42 for the Noble Horse, 49 melee attack for the Cappadocians, 29 weapon damage for both, 15 bonus versus large for both. The Cappadocians have 2 better charge bonus, 5 worse melee defense at 37 instead of 42, 25 less armor, so that's actually a pretty big deal. Not quite as tanky and survivable as the Bactrian Noble Horse in melee. Same amount of health and same amount of morale. So, yeah, the Cappadocians are capped at 2, but very cost-effective, very powerful melee cav unit. You'll definitely see them in tandem with the Cataphracts on multiplayer. Good unit. It'd be interesting if you could bring more than 2 with those guys, because I feel like they're a better investment than the Azat Knights. Because, yeah, if we look at the difference between the Azat Knights and mercenary Cappadocians, of course the Azat Knights are better, but are they 500 talents better? I'm not sure. I've always thought the Azat Knights were maybe a little bit too expensive. 1300 seems pretty high, but I'm not actually sure if that's true. So we'll go to the battle screen now and just look at the units and maybe get a look at some of the new axe killing animations. Hopefully those did get added. I know CA said they did, but I remember on previous patches watching axe warriors stab opponents with the blunt end of an axe was really dumb, and I'm hoping that got fixed, because that's just, it's very immersion breaking to see an axe with a blunt end get stabbed through someone's face. It's very silly to watch. So one thing I wanted to do before we jump down and actually look at what the units look like and see some of the animations for the Kartli Axmen is just quickly go over what I think a army setup for Armenia is going to look like on the multiplayer setting. Now this is very early on. I'm sure there are going to be many different builds that can work for Armenia, and one thing that's nice about them is that they have really good cavalry and archers, so there are a lot of different kind of combinations that you can bring with them, combinations of cavalry and skirmishers that would be very effective. They're a lot like Parthia like that, but this is kind of what I would expect to see from an Armenian multiplayer composition in like a tournament or something. I think bringing a ton of cavalry and having that mobility advantage is going to be huge. You got to take advantage of the Cataphracts' power. You're going to have to bring multiple units of Cataphracts, I think. And yeah, the Kartli Axmen and the Noble Spearmen are the unique units for Armenia, but I don't think they're going to be an effective part of any competitive builds, because these Persian Hoplites are super cheap, and on this patch they're going to last a while. One of the changes was that lower tier units, especially Hoplites, can now last much longer against elite troops. So Persian Hoplites, I think, would be kind of just a holding force that can be your anvil and hold down a bunch of higher tier sword units for a little bit while you give time for your Cappadocians and your Cataphracts to flank around and get some decisive hammer and anvils off. Bringing horse archers is probably going to be pretty common with them as well, and of course bringing the Eastern archers. Until archers get patched or changed, you're always going to see a lot of them with Eastern factions because the Eastern archers are simply better than their counterparts over in Greece or further west. So this kind of army setup, I think, is what you're going to see. You're going to see the hoplites deployed in the middle, just hold down sword units, have the Cappadocians and Cataphracts come in from the flanks and the rear, skirmish a lot with the Eastern archers, whittle down at their higher armored units, and I think that's probably what you're going to see. I would say that Armenia is a strong faction, and again, it's not because of the Kartli Axmen, it's not because of the Noble Spears, not because of any of their unique units. It's because they have the Eastern archers and they have really strong cavalry. So when you have strong skirmishers and strong mobility, they're a pretty good faction. I think we'll see them a lot on a competitive setting. So we'll jump down to the map now and you can look at the units yourselves. So yeah, just wanted to give you guys a look at some of the new units for the Armenians. And we can see that the sea actually did take the time to make Armenia look like its own culture. Now whether these helmets are historically accurate or not, I'm not sure. I haven't done any research on the subject whatsoever. But I believe these helmets with the ram's horns and some of these other helmets here are unique to Armenia. And I mean, they look really cool. Like if you look at some of the other units, in fact, a lot of the Armenian units have these new kind of helmets. And I don't know, the shading actually looks different in this game as well. The coloring, a lot of the new units, or a lot of the new factions and the old factions got a color revamp. So I don't know, the game does look slightly different than it did before, but one thing that I just noticed was when I was looking at the preset maps for Rome 2, they actually added a bunch of new maps, and this is one of the new ones. I don't remember which one it is, but I'm glad that they have more preset maps because it can be quite the pain to look through and find some of them on the map editor. But yeah, so Armenia looks like its own culture. That's pretty cool. We can look at the Persian Cavalry. You can see they're using the linothorax, I believe is what it's called. So it's like hardened cloth armor, so that's probably why they only have the 40 armor. And then let's look at some of the other units. Of course, you guys know what Royal Cataphracts look like. I gotta say, I'm a little disappointed. I wanted to see an Armenian Cataphract unit that was unique to Armenia. It's too bad we didn't get it, but I love Royal Cataphracts. They're one of my favorite units in the game, so I can't complain too much. And they look awesome. But I just wanted to, and I'll turn my mic off in a second here, I just wanted to show you some of the killing animations. So we're going to get my Kartli Axman into melee with these hillmen, see if we can see any new killing animations, and you can see the blood pack at work. So I'll turn my mic off now, and I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, maybe I'm dumb, but I'm pretty sure I'm seeing stabbing animations with the axes. Like, I'm pretty sure I just saw someone get stabbed in the neck with one. So maybe they didn't change the animations. If they didn't, I'm a little sad. I'm seeing some beheadings here. I don't know. Whatever. If you guys actually clearly see whether that they got rid of the stabbing animations for axes that have blunt ends, I'd love to know, but I'm looking at it right now and I'm not seeing any changes in the animations at all. So whatever. I mean, it's not something to really grind over, but it's something that they said they changed in the patch, so whatever. We'll figure it out later. Hope you guys enjoyed the Armenian faction overview, and I'll talk to you all later. Indy Pride.